You are listening to Modern Retrospect, retro hits and modern bits. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Yovan. Welcome to our very first episode, and what better way to get things started than to do our first 3 episodes on Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony. Today's episode will be on Nintendo. We will be taking a quick look back on 2020 for the big end, and after that, we will discuss everything we know about 2021, including the most recent Nintendo Direct, previously announced games, rumors, and our overall hopes for 2021. Alright, let's get started. So, in 2020, Nintendo had a quiet year. The pandemic was going on, and they didn't have a lot of releases. They didn't have a lot of directs. And overall, it was pretty quiet. They did release a statement saying that due to the circumstances of the pandemic, they were going to have to shuffle some resources. There were going to be some delays, and they were going to have people work from home. They did have a few releases, some noticeable releases, and I'm going to kind of briefly go over them. Tokyo Mirage Wii U game, Xenoblade Definitive Edition, which is a remake of Xenoblade, Clubhouse Games.
Yeah, which I wigged out big on.
Yeah, that one was great. Paper Mario Origami King, a great game. Some sports games. Pikmin 3, another Wii U game.
One I still need to get, actually.
Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, a noticeable release for the year. One of the biggest releases of the year.
Yep,
and
on day buy for me on that one.
And of course, Animal Crossing New Horizon. Now, Animal Crossing New Horizon is a game that kind of took the world by storm, and it came at the perfect time. The pandemic was raging, everybody was at home, nobody could go out, and this game, which had done well before on the 3DS, about 12 million, and then respectively before that, came out and ended up selling about 30 million for the year. I bought 2 copies, one for my kids and one for myself, and really it did consume us. It was perfect. It was just a perfect title for being at home, sharing with your family, sharing with friends, and just kind of being engulfed in the whole Animal Crossing experience. Now,
yeah, that was actually the first Animal Crossing for me.
Was it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had played Mario Crossing before. Animal Crossing on the GameCube. I played Animal Crossing on the GameCube. I played on the 3DS, and while I did enjoy those games, and I sunk about 20, 30 hours into them respectively, I didn't get into them as much as I did Animal Crossing New Horizon. This game just, there was something about it, and maybe it was just the circumstances. Maybe it was the fact that everybody was home and you had all these things in your mind as far as, you know, the pandemic and everything else going on, political, etc., that this game just hit at the perfect time, and it was, is it fair to say that this game was a phenomenon?
I think so. I mean, you kind of know why it worked that well, but I really am curious what would have happened if we didn't have the pandemic. But I do feel that it happened to be the perfect, what they call, distraction or embrace of, like, living a, like, as you say, a life away in a more, like, positive and happy manner. So I think that it spoke to a lot of people who were already fans and people who weren't fans. And, I mean, hell, I know people who never played Animal Crossing game before and they ended up buying it, like, during the last year.
Now, 2020 was definitely the year of the remake or re-release, with Tokyo Mirage, as previously discussed, Xenoblade Chronicles, SpongeBob, a great GameCube title, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, another game I really liked, although basic, Pikmin 3, and a few others that don't come to mind, but I do know that this was the year that Nintendo padded out its release schedule with Wii U, GameCube, and other remakes. And it was just a slow year overall. And as far as events, there wasn't much as far as events. E3 was canceled. A Pokemon Direct happened early on, but, you know, after that, complete silence. The Nintendo 2DS was discontinued. Some mini directs here and there, partner showcases. Quite a few partner showcases, actually. There was about 2 or 3. Of course, Mario celebrated his 35th anniversary, and Nintendo released a few titles, including 3D All-Stars, Super Mario 35. What would you call it? Would you call it almost a
It's almost like the same way they did that Tetris Royale game. So basically, it's almost like a
yeah,
battle royale game except with the
yeah,
Mario
battle
setting.
royale version of Super, which I enjoyed very much. And the first time I actually played it, I ended up getting first place. So probably purely based on some of those old school skills. But afterwards, when all the kiddos picked up on it, it became a lot harder to get first place, I will admit. And it could actually drag on for quite a bit.
Yeah, guilty. I have it on my Switch, but haven't played it yet.
Now, after the third partner direct, we had a Monster Hunter direct. And then after that, we had a fourth partner direct. So the year was littered with partner directs and
Which
really
actually,
third party.
yeah, which actually got a lot better as the year went on. People started to want that since we weren't getting the usual Nintendo Directs.
Yeah, it actually had a nice side effect of Nintendo kind of taking a step back and letting its partners and third parties shine, with Nintendo just filling in the gaps with the Wii U titles we've mentioned and the Mario 35 year anniversary stuff that they did. So it did have that kind of unintended effect of letting others shine. Normally Nintendo kind of sucks the air out of the room, and they take all the attention, and third parties are kind of left at the table by themselves. So that was one nice thing. Now, going back to Animal Crossing, this game was absolutely huge. I don't, again, we're kind of chasing our own tails here with this, but I don't, the impact this game had, I mean, it sold 30 million copies in 1 year. That's absolutely staggering.
And 10 million in
Absolutely
the first 3
staggering.
months.
Yeah, most, if you sell that much in a lifetime, you're doing cartwheels. But to do that in a single year kind of shows you the impact that this title had. It was everywhere. It was used by celebrities. It was used by, the presidential candidates. I know Biden used it as a kind of marketing tool, and it was just used.
The fire department
Everybody
actually
was
used
using
it too.
Yeah, everybody, you would go on Twitter and it looks like everybody was talking Animal Crossing. Companies were using it to market, which it felt kind of dirty to go on Animal Crossing or go on Twitter and see companies using it for their marketing purposes. But it just kind of shows you the impact this game had, that companies thought enough of it to spend money and start creating some of their towns and T-shirts and etc. and use that as a marketing tool. So the impact of this game was just amazing, cannot be understated, and that's probably the biggest thing of 2020 that I could think of. Otherwise, it was a quiet year overall. Now, Joseph, with that said, what do you remember about 2020 as far as Nintendo, and what are your impressions?
Well, I remember that it was the year that I was craving for like so much more information I was getting, and I could kind of know why. I didn't know why. The Animal Crossing thing was baffling to me. I did pick it up in July, and it was the first one I played, so that was actually focused because a friend wanted me to get it. But Nintendo's strategy changed, where people noticed that last year, despite the pandemic, they started doing this thing where they would announce a game like 3 months before its release, which is both kind of exciting, but it was just so like they had this thing where it was like bomb dropping, just like, ooh, bomb, announcement, never heard of it, announcement, never heard of it. And I think the biggest one for me was Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I could not believe it. It came out of nowhere. There were no rumors for it. And for me, aside from Animal Crossing, I think Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was the biggest release, just because they were like, hey, we don't have got any Breath of the Wild 2 information, so hey, here's this whole other game that no one saw coming, and it releases in 3 months. I mean, that's a pretty big bomb drop. So it was very unexpected for me.
Yeah, looking briefly at the release schedule, I'm not sure if Nintendo did this purposely, but it almost seemed like a perfect almost release date for the time. Huge time sink games like Xenoblade Chronicles. I mean, that game is like 100 hours, 80 hours.
Oh yeah.
Clubhouse games. That's another game that's it just screams, kind of be at home and very casual. Your grandma or mom could play it, and it's just kind of the perfect game to release during a pandemic. I know that's a weird sentence, but then you had, again, you said Hyrule Warriors. That's a game that you could just sink hundreds of hours into, right? So Tokyo Mirage is an 80-hour game, and so with a lot of these releases, even though we were at home, it gave you a perfect opportunity to stay home, either put in tons of time on Animal Crossing, which you could spend as much as an hour or 100 hours or 1,000 hours in that game. Then you have RPGs, like I said, Tokyo Mirage and Xenoblade. Hyrule Warriors is not exactly an RPG, but it's a game you could really put in hundreds of hours. Just between those three games, it's like hundreds and hundreds of hours. So, and also myself, I had a huge backlog. So I'm sure there's tons of people that also had a huge backlog. It gave myself and probably a lot of others the opportunity to catch up on their backlog. The PS3 was the PS4, was winding down. The Xbox One was winding down. So it almost was the perfect time to take a look at your library and said, okay, what have I not played? What do I need to catch up? And it gave everybody a perfect opportunity just to stay home. And I know I caught up on a lot of games that were just kind of waiting for me that I hadn't gotten an opportunity to play the year before, since there were so many releases. That's what I will remember 2024, other than the obvious things going on in the world.
Yeah, you're right. It did give me a lot of time to catch up, though. Unfortunately, I have to say, I think it was due to the fact that most games that they also announced for Switch last year were like a lot of releases that had never been on Switch, like the Borderlands collection, the BioShock collection,
And, a lot of collections.
Oh yeah, a lot of collections, and I feel like it really was the year where, because there were so many third-party titles and they knew that they'd get delayed, or they probably didn't want to release certain games at certain times, that they were, you're right, they were really letting the third-party kind of own the show. And like, there were so many like partner showcases, and I started noticing where they started releasing like there was a huge information gap, and then they'd have little bomb drop release games. But then they started doing a thing that all the way to the end of the year, ever since August, it started just every week there'd be some news of something, whether like a release, an announcement, a partner showcase. And I think that was their way of trying to end the year to pick up momentum for the holidays, because they felt, I guess, that'd be the most they'd get out of it, because 2021, I'm guessing they were really hoping would be quite different.
Correct. Now, going back to Super Mario Brothers and Nintendo celebrating its 35th anniversary, I enjoyed the 3D collection. It was bare bones. They could have done more. I enjoyed Mario 35. But in your opinion, do you think Nintendo should have done more? I mean, this is their mascot, right? There is no more popular character than Mario. He's the Mickey Mouse of video games. It's 35 years. It's a good number. Do you think Nintendo could have done more?
Well, I kind of wonder sometimes if I think Nintendo believes it's doing a lot. I mean, let's count the things that they did. So
I missed out on the pins. That hurts, missing out on the pins.
I guess because I'm not too big of a fan of pin, but let's just talk about, like, there's a whole bunch of merchandising, right, that they announced. Clothing lines, accessories and whatnot. You had the All-Star Pack. You had the 35th anniversary. You had the release of the Game & Watch? Was it the Game & Watch little console that came with Super Mario Bros?
I really like that. You're right.
Oh, I remember you jumped on that so fast.
I jumped on. I thought they were going to be rare, but I went to Target this morning and there's about 50 of them there, so I really misjudged that one. But
yeah,
I'd rather them not be rare than rare.
That's true, and I think then they announced that they were bringing Super Mario 3D World with Bowser's Fury, but that wasn't going to come till like the next year. And so I feel like a lot of people maybe were really hoping for like an actual new entry in Mario, but I feel you have a point that maybe they could have done more. I suppose it's just because there was a lot of we've been there, done that. It was a lot of nostalgia that they gave us, aside from Bowser's Fury, which wasn't really shown off in detail until like the end of the year or the beginning of 2021. So I'm kind of undivided on that, because I feel like maybe they felt it wasn't right to announce a new Mario game yet. Maybe they're still working on it. Maybe they're testing the waters.
Yeah, I did not expect a new Mario announcement. A new Mario. Mario 3D World's not new, so that was kind of expected. I think it had even been on the rumor mills before, but a true sequel to Mario Odyssey or something else, I did not expect that myself. But so looking back at 2020, it's a weird year. undoubtedly it's a weird year. It's a weird year for every single. It was weird for Sony. It was weird for Microsoft. I'm sure every development studio. It was just weird. So I think Nintendo just they got a free pass in a sense, right? No one was gonna kind of look at them and look at the release schedule and look at the games they were releasing and give them a hard time. I don't think most people have. I haven't heard anybody really get on them for having a slow release period. And the directs were not as plentiful as we've gotten them before. The news kind of trickled out. They were just really kind of tight-lipped about everything, and I think people really understood that and why, and Nintendo kind of benefited from that. But now that we're in 2021, I think things are different. I think the expectations are a lot higher. I think people expect now that they're going to come out of the year like a rocket, and all the stuff that they had slated for 2020 that got delayed. 2021 is the year that we all expect to just be littered with releases, right? This is the year of the Switch. It's been out in the market already long enough. It's going into its fourth year. It's a mature console. Nintendo's development studios are probably gearing up again now, full steam ahead, and expectations, in my opinion, are higher. And looking at their initial list of games for 2021, now some of them already came out. Super Mario 3D World, a wonderful Wii U game with a really nice extra in Bowser's Fury. I've been playing it. It is really nice, and it might be a proof of concept for a future Mario game, so let's watch out for that. And on top of that, you have pretty good stuff like Persona 5 Striker. It's getting really good reviews. Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, a game that I very much want to try. Bravely Default 2.
Yeah, big one coming out this month.
Yeah. That one comes out this Friday. And
well, pardon me, technically February 26th.
Yeah, it was funny. I was at Target, like I said, and it was already out. Now, I don't know if they would have let me purchase it, but they already had it out, which is kind of weird. But really quickly, just kind of want to go through some games that I think are noticeable and that have been announced for this year and are kind of noticeable announcements. Some that are big games and some that are kind of near and dear to my heart. So, new Pokemon Snap. That's a big one. People have been asking for Pokemon Snap since the original N64 game. I love that game. Love it, love it, love it. I used to go to Blockbuster and print out the little stickers, and I still have a sheet of those stickers. You would take the pictures on your N64 game and you could save it on the memory card and you could just print them out as stickers. It was a wonderful feature, and hopefully they carry it. Axiom Verge 2. Really love the original. Evil Dead, the game. Now this one's a weird one. I don't know if it's going to be great, but I love Evil Dead, the show and the movie, so kill me. The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 4. A wonderful RPG series. No More Heroes 3. Ys 9. And I very much enjoyed Ys 8, and I'm actually replaying a bunch of the games.
Yeah, I'm still playing Ys 8 right now.
It's great, man. I love that game, and I'm kind of going back and catching up on a whole bunch of games that I've missed out. I have some games for the Vita and that I need to play, and then of course the recently announced Tony Hawk 1 and 2 HD, which was a bit of a surprise, I'll admit. And of course, Monster Hunter Stories 2 and Monster Hunter are coming out soon. Those are big games. So there's a few other stuff here, but I'm not going to go through every single thing. Kind of looking at this announced games. Now, I purposely did not go over the games that have been announced in the Direct. We'll get to that shortly. So I just wanted to go over games that were already previously announced and kind of get your thoughts on what you think. Of course, we know that we know Nintendo. They like to announce games 2-3 months, before release. So we know that the list of games right now is nowhere near complete. And in the upcoming months, especially during E3, they're really I expect them to let loose and announce a whole bunch of stuff. But with that caveat, looking at the list that you see now, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, it is mostly comprised of pretty much solely third party, even though that they were announced last year. and that they're going into this year, 2021. So it's mostly, you can kind of tell this is the pattern that they were going at it before it hit this year, that it is mostly third-party titles. With Bravely Default 2 actually, to clarify real quick, Bravely Default 2 coming out February 26th, since, basically this would be March by the time this airs. But I would say that stuff like Monster Hunter Rise, probably the biggest upcoming one, which got announced last year, is getting a lot of attention. It's Capcom's like full steam ahead on that right now. And
that's a big release, especially in Japan. Big release.
Oh yeah, and I feel like they're coinciding it with trying to get your attention for also Monster Hunter Stories 2, which a lot of people, by the way, were surprised about. I did not know there would be a second game. I was settling for a port for Monster Hunter Stories on Switch, which made me very hesitant to get back to it. But instead they made a sequel, which has me super excited. I actually have not been gotten to play a Monster Hunter game in a long time. So Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Stories are the standouts for me. I would also say that Hollow Knight Silk Song, a lot of people are sad that we don't see enough of that right now. We have no idea when it's going to come out anyways. And then, of course, the 13 remake actually came out a while back to a lot of actual issues that people had problems with that were based on the original.
Okay, Joseph, so looking at this list again, one thing standing out, and you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Vita. So I expect that the Switch isn't going to get as many third-party releases now that the PS5 and Xbox Series X is out. It's just by virtue of the games maybe not being feasible in the system. And what happened with the Vita is that while third-party, huge kind of third-party games, the big AAA games were not appearing in the system, that system was carried by Japanese games and indie games. It was a kind of like a Japan dream for anybody that loves Japan games. The Vita was just great. You were getting all kinds of visual novels and RPGs, and it's just a wonderful little machine for stuff like that, including all the brilliant indies that were coming out for the system. And I really do think that the fate of the Nintendo Switch, now don't get me wrong, while much, much brighter, because I do think that we're still going to get all the third parties for that game. Maybe not all of them, but, and then you have Nintendo. Nintendo's not going to abandon the beat on the side of the street like Sony did. But on top of Nintendo, you're going to get all these amazing Japanese games and visual novel games, and just kind of looking at this, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Rune Factory 5. I mean, those are amazing games that are coming out for the system, right? So that's what I think the fate of the Switch is going to be, even as third parties just kind of fade away, if they fade away. What do you think?
Well, you've got a point. I do feel that the Vita did die due to lack of first-party support, even though it did get a lot of what they call the indie games and the actual Japan RPG games. Unfortunately, as I said, those can't make a system survive alone, but it really
Sony really did that system dirty, didn't they?
They did. I think they around the beginning supported it very early with a couple of big releases like Uncharted, Killzone, Tearaway, I think. And they were good. They were actually pretty good. A lot of people liked them. It's actually a very good system, but as I said, it lacked the support that Nintendo loved to do on their portables, and that same type of support carried into if you think about into their portable, which is also their main console. And you're right that I feel like the Switch, the reason why it's getting all these Japanese games, is in my opinion because so many of those games in Japan, they love the portable systems, and the Vita was actually a very nice system in Japan. So I get the feeling that it's like the perfect breeding ground for this kind of get it all. We're getting the first part, we're getting the third party. The third party did take a little bit, but they were very gung-ho on bringing it. And then we've got the indie games, and we've got the special RPGs that have only made it to Japan. They're coming to America on the Switch. It's the perfect opportunity with these things, so I do feel that even if third-party support does wane, I feel like Nintendo already has plans to either keep that third-party support alive through I guess you could say through either a possible revision, or
Yeah,
that
and you,
they want to just keep it supported using other types of games because they're actually super focused on their first party right now as well.
and you nailed it on the head. I think, and we're gonna talk about this later, but I think if Nintendo does end up revising the system, that it could be a shot in the arm. But if they add enough horsepower to do so, that's the thing right there. If the revision comes out and it's more like a new 3DS, I don't think it's gonna do much to kind of slow the kind of exodus of third parties. And
they're
I
reaching
don't
a
mean
critical
that.
point going into 2021 for the Switch.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be negative. I don't think, I'm not saying that the Switch isn't worthy of third party support. It's just, the natural progression as far you have new systems like the PS5 and Xbox Series X, the games are just going to get better and better looking and just not feasible on the Switch. Just the file size alone, right? Like the Switch isn't going to be able to hold some of these files. I mean, these games are getting almost 100 gigs, right? They're going to these. I don't think that it's going to be possible to port some of these AAA games to the Switch. I just don't. Now you're still going to get the indies, and you're still going to get games, developed with the Switch in mind, but you're just not going to get the big games. So and that divide is going to be more and more as you get into the Switch life. So a good pro system with enough muscle under the hood to not catch up to the PS5 or Xbox X, but not be left, far enough behind where a publisher is going to look at the Switch and be, nope, definitely not going to go there. You want a publisher to look at the Switch or the Switch Pro and be, oh boy, this is going to be tough, but you know what? We think we could do it. A la Doom Eternal, a game that probably has no business being on the Switch since it was technologically more advanced than the first one, but
heavily delayed too.
Yeah, and even then, you're right. Even then, it was heavily delayed. All hands on deck to get that game working on the Switch, and if that divide gets bigger, it's gonna be tough to get some of these games, and that's why I really do think that, at the end of the day, whether it's in 2022 or 2023, the Switch is gonna have a longer life than we think, supported by Japanese studios and indies.
Yeah, and though speaking of that, actually, I think they've actually pretty much have bullet pointed what they plan to do anyways. I would almost say that it might be Nintendo being a little cocky, or it could just be that they were very prepared for 2021. So if there is a revision, it's most likely probably going to be the end of the year. But until then, they've lined this year with releases, which we're going to be getting into, which was the first really big thing for Nintendo this year.
Hold on, Joseph. I have my friend here, and she really, really wants to tell us something. What is it? What do you want? Tell us.
I got an invitation to join Smash!
All right, so I guess it's obvious what's next. Pyra in Smash.
Oh, yes.
That was the opening. It was hype. Crazy hype. Nintendo came out with fire. She
literally
is somebody. Yeah, literally, right? Now, I did not expect Pyra to make it. I'm very glad that she did. It was a great opening to the Direct. I could have thought of a few other ways to open it that would have been just as hype, but I'm not going to complain. They got me. I thought it was Xenoblade 3, honestly, but they got me. And this is the next best thing, right? I would have preferred Xenoblade 3, but I'm really glad that Pyra and Mitra are in Smash, and they brought back some, the original voice cast, which, it's just kind of like falling into a comfortable place hearing them talk again. I really loved their voice acting. I know they got a lot of flack at the beginning, but I really loved their voice acting. I'm glad that they're in Smash, and it was a great opening. Now, after that, I'm going to say that. Yeah.
If I may, real quick, not only was it literally like the surprising thing that boom, they were like Nintendo Direct, tune in tomorrow, and they highlighted that Super Smash was being involved. I just couldn't believe that I didn't see it coming based on what they showed in the trailer, because they get you hyped up on nostalgia so much, and you're thinking this is Nintendo Direct, that as soon as that trailer happened, you're deceived so joyfully, and it's a pure Nintendo thing where they can deceive you so joyfully and still make you feel so happy, because
Yeah.
I've been gunning for Rex or Pyra, or Rex and Pyra, to be in for a long time.
It was a classic Smash reveal.
But
the fun did not end there, because we had a bevy of games announced in this Direct. Everything from Mario Golf, which I'm very happy that it's back with a story mode. Fall Guys, I know Fall Guys is a
total given.
Yeah, it's a huge game, and I think we all expected it to be on the Switch. It's just a perfect platform, and I'm not gonna go over every game announced. There's quite a few, but the ones that kind of stood out to me personally were games like the Outer Wilds, a game that I'm really looking forward to. Apex, another game that I think we all expected, and while probably a pain to port over to the Switch, and I think it's actually being done by Panic Button.
Panic Button, they're big on helping out with those Switch ports.
And Skyward Sword HD, I think a game that was in the rumor mill for a while. So
it was,
and even if it wasn't, it was a game that I think most of us expected, since it was the natural progression from Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD.
Yes, and what I have to say, I think the thing that just got me so excited is it's the last HD 3D Zelda that I was really hoping that would get an HD remake, and it seems like they're doing it really good. Talk about the 60 frames a second. I just have to say,
it looked cleaner, but I have some thoughts on that, and I will get into it right now. But to kind of close the Direct, they ended up closing with a game that I did not expect to be announced, and game that was a surprise that they used it as a closer. Now, surely, I mean, it is big enough to be a closing title for a Direct, so I'm not going to doubt its star power. And I'm talking about Splatoon 3. I was shocked, because while Splatoon 2 has been out for a while, I didn't feel that I was ready to move on from Splatoon 2, and I didn't feel that Splatoon 3 was honestly necessary. I almost expected Splatoon 3 on a Switch, maybe Pro, 2 years from now, although the game's not going to be released until 2022, so...
Which is actually rather funny that they announced it that early.
But, actually, to be honest, I actually expected a Splatoon 3 with the next announced system for Nintendo. So this one really caught me off guard. Now, of course, there was a whole lot more announced. It was a pretty good Direct. I think, there's different opinions on the internet whether it was a great Direct or it was a letdown, considering that this was really the first Direct since September 2019. That was the last time we had an actual, real, big,
expectations were at
Direct.
A fever pitch when they announced the real Nintendo Direct.
Absolutely. So expectations were very much high, and in some ways, I don't think it would have met the expectations for a lot of people. I didn't come in with expectations, so they weren't necessarily disappointed.
Yeah, I tried not to, but I was so trying to predict some of them.
Yeah, so now let's get into some of the stuff that we actually like. So, in your opinion, watching the Direct, and maybe you've watched it a couple times more since, what stood out to you? And not only that, but what, aside from what stood out to you, what did you think of Pyra and Smash again?
Well, as I said, I've been really big on telling my siblings that, like, oh, do you know what, Rex and Pyra, they still got time, and all these characters keep getting announced. And while I've been really loving the characters they've announced, I'm really big on playing all the new characters. It's almost like a euphoric moment for you when you finally realize what you've been predicting, because I've been a big fan of Xenoblade for a while now, and to finally see them in Super Smash Brothers, especially with such an amazing trailer, such a deceiving trailer, the most deceiving trailer since a Joker from Persona 5 was announced, and that was the big thing that people were like, oh, we're getting like lots of new characters. But I would definitely say, starting first, it was one of the biggest highlights of the Direct, and they threw it right at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm very much excited. I can't wait to see her moveset and how they're gonna use her. Again, it's a sword character. I'm kind of tired of sword characters, if I'm honest, but this is one sword character that I'll make an exception for. I really, really love Pyra, and it's going to give me an excuse to go back to Xenoblade 2. Maybe we'll do an episode down the line on Xenoblade 2, who knows, but that's a game that's dear and near to my heart. My children love it. We love to watch the cutscenes like if it was an anime, and the only bummer is that Rex is in there as a kind of Mii costume. I really would have loved to see Rex in there as a full-blown character. But hey, Pyra and Mitra, they're my girls. Bring them on. So what else did you enjoy about the Direct?
Well, I would say there were a few side games that were announced that I was happy to see that actually had been rated early. Like, it wasn't leaked or anything. It was that they got rated, and that was Tales of the Borderlands. And there was the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, but that unfortunately was not, even though it was rated. But the Tales of the Borderlands was a big game that I've really been wanting. I like those story-driven games, even though I haven't played them. I've always been big on wanting to play
Famicom
them.
detective games. I'm excited for those.
Yeah, I have to say those actually did intrigue me. I actually do like those type of games, and originally I'd never heard of them before, but they did intrigue me. I would say I was not very interested when they announced Mario Golf. I have to say, I still think Mario Tennis probably got me a little more around the beginning. Mario Golf, though, I would say when it showed a couple new mechanics, it mentioned story, I thought, oh, well, that's better. It made me like, I just feel like maybe it's just I'm not into the franchise, I suppose. Fall Guys was a no-brainer. When I saw it announced, I was like, oh, of course. I'm excited that it's actually coming to Switch. I really am, because I think it looks really
3.
fun.
What did you think of Splatoon 3?
Splatoon 3, it's so difficult because I'm a fan of what they did with Splatoon 2 when they made a great single player edition with the Octo expansion. The game is really fun. It's got lots of personality. I love the detail and enthusiasm in that game. It's so unique. And I felt when I saw the trailer, I didn't know what it was at first. And then they just basically show you, and I'm just like, wait, what? And it's Splatoon 3 even before the title comes. And I'm just curious because it looks like it's got some new mechanics. It looks like it's got some new features, though. I'm more excited on the possibility of what they're going to do with like the story or the franchise or the changes they're going to make, because right now it's a little too early to say.
I do love the story mode in this game, believe it or not. On top, obviously the multiplayer is great, but I've always enjoyed the story mode, especially in Splatoon 1. That story mode was great, and the ending boss was one of my favorite Nintendo bosses, honestly. It was that good. Now, I have a lot of kind of mixed thoughts on Splatoon, but I'm gonna have to kind of mull on these thoughts and kind of. I'm quite not ready to talk about it and what I feel. I really, especially since the game's not gonna be out until 2022. So, I don't want to kind of put my foot in my mouth per se, right, and say something, because while I'm not necessarily ready for Splatoon 3, that might change later in the year. That might change in early 22. And, more games for the Switch is fine by me, but I have mixed feelings about this one. But, well, I'm going to kind of table this discussion on Splatoon 3 right now. And really, I want to get into Skyward Sword HD, because that's kind of the title that has been causing quite a stir. Now, people are kind of upset about the price. It's a full-fledged $60 for this game. It's obviously, I don't want to say it's a remake. I'm not sure if it's a remastered either. I mean, it's
you're kind of right.
From what I saw, it's in HD, definitely, right? I mean,
and 1080p as well.
It's 1080p, which anything less than that, you'd be disappointed. Though I've been disappointed before. Pikmin was 720 and Bayonetta was 720p as well. But this is a Wii game, so I expected no less than 1080p, and 60 frames is pretty great as well.
It's a nice addition. Because it's funny because as I recall, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD, they did not have 60 FPS, and they could have. I really think they could have.
No, they were 30, and they probably could have, but they were 30. But to the Wii U's credit, those games ran at 1080p, which I really much enjoyed the extra sharpness, and 30 frames is what they ran on the GameCube as well. So it didn't really bother me as much. And part of it could have been because some of those old games, the animations are locked in at 30 frames. So when you update them at 60, the frame rate is 60, but the animation is still 30. Now that happened with Resident Evil 4. where the game was 60 frames, but the animation was still 30, and it created kind of some choppy reloading animations, etc., because they're animating at half rate. So it could have been the Nintendo just said, you know what, we're going to do 1080p and keep them at 30, smooth 30, the original frame rate, and call it a day. And Skyward Sword HD is not a game that I kind of thought to myself, wow, Nintendo's really they're really going the 9 yards in this game, and they're redoing some of the most tedious aspects of that game. That, you know, a lot of problems that people had, including myself, as far as the structure and some of the progression. And, you know, now they're addressing the controls. Part of that's because the Joy-Cons are more modern than the Wii remote controls, so that's probably that probably helps the developers kind of clean up some of those control functions.
I actually didn't think that when it came to Skyward Sword HD, I didn't know if they were ever going to do it, because we've never seen a full implementation of, you know, that full control aside from maybe arms, which is still different. So I was super surprised that they even attempted to do a Skyward Sword HD, but then they decided, in my opinion, to top that. For a lot of people who probably don't like some of the motion controls, which was a very big divisive thing even back then when it came out, that they added full support for all button control with the right analog stick, because the Wii remote and the nunchuck, it only has the one stick. And I felt
people
that
said
was
it couldn't
actually
be done. Some people doubted whether that was going to happen or not.
But I was impressed. I was happy to see that you can play it portably without, you know, the Joy-Cons connected or on the Switch Lite, and it uses the right analog stick. And all I could think of was that reminded me of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, which used a similar mechanic.
Ah, yes, you're right. You're right.
I felt it was nice that they went the extra mile.
Or Ape Escape on the PlayStation 1, which was kind of like a dual stick showcase for that system. And it used the kind of right analog stick very much like almost like a sword, but you had a net to capture the monkeys or whatever. But I always thought that you could do the controls in a button controller, honestly. I didn't think that it wasn't impossible. And you know what? Maybe some people that said, you know what, I don't want any of that waggle BS. They'll probably say, they'll come to the table and they'll be like, okay, you're giving me regular control options. I'll give Skyward Sword a chance. So there's that. I think they could have done more, if I'm being honest. I fall kinda in the camp of saying, you know, $60, it's a little much for a game that's not gonna have a whole bunch of updates.
I will hand it to you there that yes, Nintendo is notorious for doing. It's kind of rude to say, I suppose, the bare minimum. I'd say with Skyward Sword they did a little more than the bare minimum. The additions for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Oh, hold on. Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, they at least incorporated the whole screen thing, and it was a nicer mechanic system. They corrected
and Wind Waker, they
things.
redid the whole Triforce quest.
You're right. Twilight Princess added an extra wolf mode, which I recall.
That was pretty cool. I like that.
I actually don't know. They haven't said if they have redone anything yet for Skyward Sword, aside for adding the controls and giving it 60 frames a second and running it to 1080p. As far as I know, it does seem like a bit much if there isn't any improvement, but Nintendo is notorious for doing that, which I feel is kind of unfortunate. I mean, you get technically, like, if there is a trilogy that's released of the other Zelda games, I feel like it's gonna seem a little weird. But you know what? Unfortunately, there's some things I think to myself, I'm like, Nintendo being Nintendo, because they know people will rub it on nostalgia. And hey, it did. Skyward Sword is sold out on Amazon.
Yeah, it did. And you know, I'm not gonna lie, I have it pre-ordered on Amazon, so I'm a big fat hypocrite. That doesn't mean that you're committed. It does not mean you're committed. So at any point I could cancel, but I have it pre-ordered. I'm still undecided. But so far we've talked about what was announced. How about we talk about stuff that was not announced?
Ooh.
Right? Now, there's a couple big, juicy, fat elephants in the room. And probably the biggest one of all, in my opinion, has to be Bayonetta 3. A game that I've been dying to get information for the last couple years. And I get it. The guy, the director, I think, right? He's told us, please, for the love of God, stop asking me. Please, I beg all of you.
Isn't this your favorite thing to hear? Progress is going smoothly. Progress is going smoothly.
Yeah, I'm sure he's locked away in some cell when Nintendo guards, and somebody is tweeting out for him. That's not really him tweeting, really. That's just somebody tweeting just so we know that he's okay. But no, he's probably locked away. But Bayonetta was a big omission. I really expected to hear something from Bayonetta 3. I've been very much patient. I think most people have been patient. This is a game that's near. I mean, Bayonetta 2 is one of the greatest action games of all time, and so is the first one, by the way. So that to me was the biggest omission. Now, Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 news, I did not expect it, but I guess you could count it as an omission. And then down that list further, Metroid news, another game I did not expect to hear any news from. Now, besides those three...
I just wanted to add a quick little thing that I would say that I know we didn't feel like Metroid was going due to all the news where Retro is hiring like a whole lot of gaming veterans. So you're kind of right that I wasn't expecting that either. I was super hopeful for Breath of the Wild 2 news, probably because I'm just really dying to know. Bayonetta 3, I literally thought it was going to be the last game shown at the end of the Direct, and
I did as well.
And Splatoon 3, it was so weird that was the one at the end. Anyways, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm really wondering what now their strategy is to get Bayo 3 out during, the year that is going to be Zelda's anniversary.
And that leads me to my next thing. So we didn't get any Bayo 3 news. We didn't get Zelda news or Metroid news. Do you expect any 1, 2, or 3 of these games to be released in 2021?
Yes.
At least one. Well, what are the odds that at least one of these 3 gets released in 2021?
Bayonetta 3 is going to likely be done in the same manner that Pikmin 3 and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is done. They're going to drop it right on some announcement, some big trailer, some huge spectacle or overview, and they'll be released in the next 3 months. I don't know what month they'll do it on, and I don't know what 3 months will precede it after that. But they've already outlined the first half of the year with titles in a huge Nintendo Direct that we haven't seen in a long time. And I have a sneaky suspicion that they're either going to wait after Zelda, Skyward Sword, and that they're going to announce information on Breath of the Wild 2. And it might be on a limb that it'll release this year, but they did say that we will get Breath of the Wild 2 news later this year. So it's not that we won't get news, but I have a feeling that if they want to make this an unbelievable year, it's going to hit the holiday.
I think Bayonetta 3 is an E3 title. I think we're going to get news in E3. That's where the dam is going to break on Bayonetta 3. I think we're going to get some news on Breath of the Wild 2, but I do not think that we're going to get that game released for the year. Now, I think you and I are both in agreement. I think both you and I agree that we're going to get Bayonetta 3 probably this year.
We are. There's no way they're going to push it to 2022. There's no way they're going to push it.
Well, I don't know about that, but...
No,
out of those 3, if I have to go out on that limb with you, and that limb is looking pretty shaky, Bayo 3 is probably the one I would kind of hang my hat on, really. Now, besides those titles, we also have some of the studios that Nintendo has. Next Level Games, I believe that's the full name. They made Luigi's Mansion 3.
Which I really want to play still. It's gorgeous game.
It's an amazing game. An amazing game. And that game... came out, was it 2019? I can't remember, but it's been
you're
out
right. Yes, it did.
So, what have they been doing since? Now they did do some kind of light DLC for that game. Nothing big really. So since then, I really want to know what they've been working on. Now you have Monolith. I really thought they were gonna have Xenoblade 3, but it wasn't. So what are they working on now? They did the Xenoblade kind of special edition or remaster, whatever you want to call it, and they did kind of go the extra mile, a lot more than Skyward Sword, that's for sure. But what have they been working on? Now you have some
Well,
other studios like NST. They kind of make the Mario versus Donkey Kong games, and then Nerd. They're the European arm of Nintendo. They mostly kind of do research and development stuff. They're the ones that did kind of the emulators and the Super Nintendo Mini and the NES Mini. Are we gonna get an N64 Mini?
oh, you're
A
really
Game
hoping for
Boy?
that. You're so
Yeah,
hoping for that.
I definitely am. What they've released something every year, right? They released the NES, the Super NES, the kind of Game and Watch. What's next? Game
So
Boy,
you just
N64.
basically say the only logical course of action is to go up, keep going up.
I think so. Now, notoriously, the N64 is very difficult to emulate. So I'm not sure if we're gonna get an N64. But you know what? A Game Boy. I would settle for a Game Boy, honestly.
What if it was a portable Nintendo 64?
I don't think so. I think that's yeah.
It'd be pretty interesting though.
Yeah, we could all dream. We could all dream, right? But there's no way. There's no way. So, I don't know. Something tells me that as far as hardware, that a kind of mini console might be the only thing that we get for 2021. Because if we're talking about new hardware, I don't think that we're gonna get a Switch Pro for 2021. Nintendo has been extremely tight-lipped about it. There's rumors out there. Now, there's this fellow, his name is Nate Drake. He's kind of like an industry insider, and he's pretty reliable. Now, he came out kind of on Resetera forum, and he said that the console is going to have NVIDIA's DLSS tech, and it's going to have 4K functionality. Now, I don't know a whole lot about this stuff. I don't pretend to be a tech guy. I do know that for DLSS, I think you need a special chip, and you actually do need some power under the hood to be able to run some of this stuff. I mean, 4K DLSS, I mean, that stuff, you need power. So if this guy is saying that, we're definitely he's saying we're definitely going to get a Pro in 2021, and it's going to have these kind of Nintendo fan wish list of features. I don't know about that. I mean, I would be over the moon if we got that, but
well, I would say it's not totally unlikely due to the fact of Nintendo's. Well, they have I forget how many years they still have with them, but I think it's down to 6 years because they were contracted in a 10-year partnership with Nvidia ever since the Switch was announced, and so they've been supplying. I guess I'm sure they've been doing lots of research and development with Nvidia solely, and Nvidia is one of the. To be fair, Nvidia. They are a powerful company when it comes to GPUs, and I do know that they could, if they wanted to, just like the first Switch, make a much cheaper, what's called much more versatile chip for the Nintendo
Tegra
Switch.
X.
It's been 4 years.
The Tegra X1 chip is an older chip, and since then, NVIDIA has come out with the Tegra 2 came out, I believe, which was faster and more powerful, and they've made revisions to that hardware. I don't think Nintendo's going to use the Tegra 2. There's a part of me that's kind of cynical and kind of knowing the way Nintendo is. The Tegra 1 is actually a lot more powerful than what the Switch can do, because they really had to kind of limit the Switch to make it work as a portable system without being connected to to the power. It has a battery and it has a screen,
battery and heating, heat sinks and everything. You really don't want that thing running hot.
No, absolutely. And at launch, the Tegra 1 on the Switch was capped, and it was only running about 30% of its actual power portably when it's in portable mode. 30%. Think about that. And then when it was docked, it was about 70% of the actual available power of the Tegra 1. So there's kind of a cynic in me that thinks Nintendo might say, you know what, we figured out how to unlock the full potential of the Tegra 1 chip while keeping the same battery life, and then calling that a Nintendo Switch Pro. That is kind of the worst case scenario, really. That would be closer to a new 3DS style of upgrade. Hopefully not. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they've been on record to say that they believe that they want the Nintendo Switch to go on as long as possible, and that they said it's only in the middle of its life cycle, and we're going on 40 years, and that's the middle of the life cycle. So it's gonna have to be a meaningful upgrade to. I do know that when they talked about the next gen consoles, slightly touching upon a little snippet into 2020, was not Nintendo did not have to worry about showcasing some new console going into next generation. That was a big deal. They were able to at least focus on whatever games they wanted to announce, even though they spaced them out into a lot of third parties. So I get the feeling that 2021 is going to be I don't know if it's a test period or if they've already planned it, that you're going to see a lot of change between Sony and Microsoft, and it may push Nintendo to know that there's going to be that line that they're going to have to cross before they start being way behind, like feeling way behind. They were like behind, like maybe like under PS4, nowhere near PS4 Pro, but now it's like to the point where, you know, you're going PS5, okay? You're not only like, you're what they call a generation and a half behind. So I get the feeling that maybe Nintendo, this is me being optimistic, that maybe Nintendo is going to be like, you know what, NVIDIA has this great chip, it's way more affordable now, it can do all these nice things, it can run at a cooler rate, it doesn't choop as much battery life, it'd be nice if we got a 1080p screen on the Switch. My thing is that if it does happen, all I'm saying is if it does happen though, kid you not, the Nintendo Switch Pro will be $400. And it'll be a move by Nintendo that will be kind of... I know it will be, but I'm saying it's going to be a move by Nintendo that we've actually not seen. And Nintendo, I think, is changing pace, and they do know that there's a limit for what they can do. Now, I could be wrong. I'm being hopeful, but I get this sneaky suspicion that Nintendo wants to upend, like they've been doing a couple times. Well, I guess you'd say the low expectation that they're just going to skimp out. And if they actually do have 4K functionality, or at least it runs better and it lasts longer and it looks better and it's able to run games without having to sometimes really digress them, then it will be a selling point for them. It'll make them at least decently on, not completely on par, but decent enough to the point that their sales will not stop. And that might be a move that people will be impressed about.
Now, besides I think we both agree that we both want a Switch Pro, right? In 2021. Yes. We would both very much be lined up to get one. Whether it's a full-on 4K, you know, beast of a portable console, or if it's more of a modest kind of new 3DS update. Either way, I think it's fair to say that I'm going to be in line to get one, and I think you would be too.
Oh, yes. If you can get your hands on one, or you're going to be buying the Nintendo Switch Pro Scalper Edition.
This is going to be a nightmare. But you know what? I don't want to... I'm having a good time right now. I don't want to talk about that. But now, besides the Switch Pro, which, again, we both agreed that we want, what else? What other kind of hopes and wishes do you have for 2021?
Well, I'd say maybe there isn't too much that we've probably already discussed about. I know I'm really big to get Breath of the Wild 2. If they release that with a Switch Pro, it'll be a dream.
You gotta think outside the box. You gotta think outside the box. There's a couple stuff to...
Yeah, I know, but I would say...
Persona 5? Not Strikers.
Well, no,
not Persona Q.
Me, I get
Persona
the feeling,
5.
I know, but I get the feeling that Persona 5 Royal's already on the PS4 or PS5, whatever. And there are certain games that I purposely designate to other consoles, even though I do know RPGs are really nice on the Switch because you can take it on the go. It's a really good way to play them. Now, if I'm thinking long term on Nintendo of hopes and wishes, I would say a true new Ace Attorney game. Okay, I've been a big fan of that series. I know that with the rating of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, which is only in Japan, coming to Switch in HD, I'm excited for that. I do want the other 3D games. They already released the other 3 2D games. And if they do that pretty soon, I really would love to see, because it would be the first time, I kid you not, the first time in Ace Attorney's franchise that a new game went straight to a console. Because it's always been portable, and they only upended that by announcing or releasing the HD trilogy of Ace Attorney, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, on the Switch and PS4.
Yeah, but the Switch is... I still consider the Switch kind of like a portable, if I'm being honest.
Well, exactly, but it's the perfect midway for them to move from portable to console, because it's the
absolutely.
middle ground. And with the extra horsepower, think of Monster Hunter Stories 2. Do you realize how beautiful that game looks in cell shade? They could make such a beautiful Phoenix Wright game. That is one of my big ones.
Come on,
for
Capcom.
sure.
Get your shit together, man.
Capcom's doing great.
They were
They're
all
good.
in on the 3DS, and Switch is getting a bunch of ports. And come on, Capcom. Where's the new stuff?
But how about the rumored Resident Evil Revelations 3 outrage?
That's a good one. That's a good point.
Supposedly a Switch
I'm
exclusive,
excited.
timed exclusive.
Yeah.
So
well,
there's a lot. Capcom's got a lot of good stuff they're trying to
is it
pump out.
weird that I'm more excited for Revelations 3 than I am for the other one, the Village or whatever it's called? I know it's weird, but I really do love the Revelation series.
It's a good series.
So there's some stuff that I'm not sure that we're gonna get. I mean, it's kind of wishful thinking, like Zelda info. I think that's kind of realistic, but for Zelda to launch,
please.
we're kind of beating a dead horse on some of this stuff. Switch Pro, Zelda info, Bayo 3, etc., etc. But some stuff that I think could be realistic. They released, I think last year was Link's Awakening, or was it 2019?
No, you're
all
right.
These years are kind of blending in now, but they released Link's Awakening. The Game Boy Color had 2 more Zelda games. Now, I believe it was... What was it?
Wasn't it Oracle of Seasons?
Oracle of Seasons and
Oracle of Ages.
Oracle of Ages, correct, yeah. I own both of them, so terrible memory. Thank you for... Thank you for telling me those names. And they were great games. One of them was action-based. They did a really cool thing. One of them was action-based, so it had a lot of action, kind of light on the puzzles. And the other one was very much puzzle-based. And then they could talk to each other via passwords.
I actually didn't know that was the case with both of them. I thought they were basically just like 2 connected games story-wise.
They kinda, in some ways now, I think they could connect. If I remember correctly, they connect by password. So if you pass one game, it gives you a password, and then you enter it in the next game, and it affects some stuff. But the biggest change to me was that one was, again, more puzzle based. So if you really love those kind of mind bending dungeons and kind of that overworld that's kind of puzzly, that one was the game for you. And if you really like just kind of action and the puzzles and light on puzzles, and the other version was that. But I would love a Link's Awakening style remake of those games. Heck, I would love a Link's Awakening update to fix the frame rate, really, if I'm being honest. Now,
yeah, I think it's because they keep trying all this really big dynamic lighting, and I don't think they've nailed it 100% yet.
The frame rate's kind of unexcusable for that game in some areas, but anyways, real quickly on my part, a D-pad Joy-Con, a real good official D-pad Joy-Con. I would love that. And then for their Super Nintendo and NES apps that they have, kind of part of the Nintendo Online membership, they need to add more games. Just keep the games coming. Now, I know there's some challenges because some of the publishers have taken back their licenses because they figured out they could make more money if they release them as separate packs. I'm looking at you, Konami, with your Castlevania and Arcade, and then Capcom kind of shaking you for your lunch money with these titles. But you know what? Come out, just find what you can, right? Right now, there's a bunch of kind of cool games that maybe didn't get rated highly back in the day, but I had never heard of or probably played of, and I'm really enjoying playing these real oddities that they're coming out. So they just need to come out with more of that stuff. And then an N64 app, right? A Game Boy app. You know what? A Virtual Boy app. Let us try these Virtual Boy games that are just trapped in hell in the system. And if you want to play them, you have to kind of go to an emulator or find the original hardware, which is super unreliable nowadays. So I really want them to expand the classic games, and that's kind of where I fall. Keeping it realistic. These are completely realistic things they could do. Now, do I think Nintendo's going to do that? Probably not with the D-pad Joy-Con. I don't think so.
I'd say that the thing that made actually quite a few people, you talking about actually adding things to the NES and SNES, a lot of people kind of baffled that they released a kind of a redone or slightly altered version of Fire Emblem, the original Fire Emblem game. as an actual game for $6, and then some expensive physical release. And some people are like, oh, why wasn't it put like on the NES emulator? Because the NES already redoes things to add save states and whatnot.
That makes me mad.
And,
That game makes me mad because they could have released Mother 3 translated finally, and they opted to bring out. Look, I'm all for Fire Emblem. Yeah, that thing was stuck on the Famicom. Release it, great. Where the hell is Mother 3?
You and probably half the Nintendo community, which, don't get me wrong, I would say that despite me never playing the game, I know that it's greatly wanted by the Nintendo community.
I have the fan translated version, the ROM, on my EverDrive for my Game Boy Advance. It's a great translation. Thank you, fans. You're wonderful. I've played a good part of it. It's a great game. It's not my favorite game, right? It's like
I heard it was pretty dark, actually, for a Nintendo game.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's not like I didn't play it and, all of a sudden my world changed and, I was walking on water and stuff like that. It's just a good game. It's a really good game that America didn't get, and it needs to come out because while it might not be the greatest game ever released, it's a really, really good game that just never made it here for no particular reason. I just don't understand why, but so anyway, I don't want to get off topic, but what do you think now, kind of closing this whole segment off, what do you think Nintendo needs to do to really make this a successful year?
Well, release Mother 3. Anyways, so
Amen.
So in the end, all I'm saying is I can see a bit of the writing on the wall. Now, Nintendo is notoriously known for being very, very left fielder. They just are they make you think something's going like predicted, and then they upend it. But to be a successful year, we have, I think, it already passed already, was the anniversary of Legend of Zelda, and Nintendo's been very quiet. But a lot of people believe it's because they're planning for a big, home run at the end of the year. We've already got half the year planned out with games. Quite a few of them that I'm really looking forward to. A lot of third party, a couple first party. Now, this, in my opinion, to make this 100% one of the, I guess, say, mind-boggling Nintendo years, it's going to sound kind of ridiculous if you want a successful year, is either you're going to give news, or they're going to give news on Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. They're going to release a trilogy of Legend of Zelda. They're already doing it with the Skyward Sword. And in my opinion, for E3, we're going to get Bayonetta 3 information, and I'm betting it's going to release this year, and at least Xenoblade Chronicles 2 at least go into the next year.
Oh, I would
now,
love
in my
that.
opinion, if you could get that much, if you could get that much news in 1 year, along with what they already showed off, was like, we have not gotten what they call them planning out every month with the release of a game for so long, that if they're able to do that for the next 6 months afterwards, and you hit the holidays with either a big title that we're just not thinking about, and if it is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, and a Pro comes out at the same time, I kid you not, that's a little too far, it might be a little far-fetched, but if that happens, you're probably looking at one of the most insane, successful holiday year sales Nintendo could ever have.
I think you're right.
It would be ridiculous. So I'm saying that, for me, if they did that, would be like record-shattering. But, in all fairness, to be a successful year right now is just for us to get releases on every single month. And for us to get news that are excited.
You nailed it on the head. I agree with you. They did this in 2017 when they launched the Switch. They had a release almost every single month, and that kind of made the Switch take off like a rocket. If they could do the same thing with 2021, and there's no reason they can't, because they've had all this time to kind of prep. If they could release a big game or a game supplemented by third party and indies every single month of the year, and then kind of play your cards right, so when holiday comes, you have your big guns ready to go to fight off the PS5 and Xbox Series X. And then anything else really is gravy, right? You announce the Pro, that's amazing, but you don't need it to have a great year. The games, really, it always comes down to the games. If they have an amazing lineup for the whole year and just release, just fire, just bam, 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 amazing game after amazing game after amazing game. Anything else is just gravy, and not really good gravy if you release a pro, but anything else is just cherries on top of, great
On top of
cake.
gravy.
yeah, cherries, well, whatever you want, gravy, cherries on top of a cake, however you want to phrase it. It's all about the games, and there's no reason why Nintendo shouldn't have a big year as far as games. They're actually in a similar position that the PS2 was in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Now, come back with me in 2001, Joseph. The GameCube was coming out. The Xbox was coming out. The PS2 already had about a year or so in the market, so they had a head start. So that year, they had just fire coming out with, Metal Gear Solid, Grand Theft Auto, Final Fantasy X. I mean, these are, just huge. I mean, huge game after huge game after huge game. And you know what? The Xbox came out and the GameCube came out, and they didn't even put a dent on the PS2 because it was already a semi-mature system, and it was coming out with its kind of second generation games. Now, I don't think the Switch is gonna stomp on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, but it could at least hold them off for a little bit longer if they just come out with fire.
Now, you have a big point on that one, because it's probably going to be more important than ever, and I think maybe Nintendo knows this, that they did say that they weren't concerned with the next gen, and you could tell they weren't, especially on holidays, with the PS5 and the Xbox. They did very, very well at the end of last year, and
They say that, but I think they are.
Yeah. Their sales have been growing every year, and their Switch has been selling like crazy. Now, I do feel that they know this, that Sony and Microsoft have plans for this year. And Nintendo, in order to at least... it's funny how we say combat, even though they're not really combating them, but to keep their sales growing, I feel like their plan is they're already showing a bit of their hand here. They're like, look at us, we're back with a Nintendo Direct to give you a whole half of the year of news. And then if they do it at least like all they have to do is 1 or 2 more times this year. A smaller Nintendo Direct and maybe a big one, right? They only have to do it maybe 2 more times this year. And
Does that count in E3 or
yes,
on top of E3?
I feel like they're an E3 specific one, and then one that is meant to finish out the end of the year. Because I get this feeling that they know that this is the year that if they want to keep sales going, then they need to finally show their hand. And it is a big year. It is the Legend of Zelda anniversary, so it is a big year for them. So I feel if they want to keep their sales growing like they have, and they want to at least be comparable to the PS5 and Xbox, which are actually going to be getting, as far as I know, quite a few games going into this year, because it's going to be a big year for them too. They have to get games out there or they're going to lose sales as well.
And so far we've been talking about games, but another area where they could really improve, online. More online features, more incentives.
They're very behind when it comes to Sony and
more
Microsoft.
incentives for members, right? Because that's they're really kind of looking at the how many subscribers they have for their Nintendo online membership, and they really want to expand on that. Well, you know what, Nintendo, give us, be more consistent in your releases, right? For the classic games, don't do things half-assed. If you release those apps with classic games because you want to incentivize people, well, do it right. If you want, you're doing trials, that's great. Do it more often. Do more trials more often. Release more classic games more often. Do more stuff to incentivize this. Update your online service so it does some basic things that I was doing back on the Xbox in the early 2000s, right? It's not, I'm only paying $20, so I'm being realistic as well. But you know what? If they want to grow the service and compete with the big boys, well, I'm sorry, they're going to have to invest in it. And hopefully this is the year where they really take that step. I don't think so. Not being pessimistic, but it's just a Nintendo fan. You're used to this.
You're used to, being a fan, but also being behind when it comes to the stuff that they pump out. But you're right. I feel the Switch, could
thinking about
benefit.
cherries on top of the cake. That's what.
Oh, aren't you fine? I hate cherries, mind you. I don't like cherries. Just whipped cream. Thank you very much, whipped cream. Okay, so the thing is the Switch has a lot of features that it still needs. I mean, hell, folders. Like, it's been 4 years. We could use some folders right now.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on the folders,
you've
man.
seen
That's
the amount of
that's
icons?
a whole. That's a whole.
I love
episode.
looking at my icons, but I would love some folders. So all I'm saying is that some new features. You're right. Expand the online features. Expand their servers. Because I did hear that they are planning to do something like that. I don't recall if it was actually the servers, but they are changing the type of network they're using because it's very old. So I do hope we do get some changes. And hell, if they do that, once again, where we're talking about what would make a successful year, hell, doing that alone, okay, would be greatly beneficial to having a knockout year. I feel 2021 is currently right now, it's prime game for being a knockout year, because 2020 was rough. They still did very good despite it being rough for them, and despite us being, only getting information near the end of the year, which Nintendo fans were starving for. Now this year's like they've got the perfect opportunity. It's wide open. If they take it, then it speaks for itself. As I said, you have all this stuff. You have all these behind-the-scenes IPs. All these companies we don't know what's working on. We've got things that we already think are going to come. We're working on. If they just go about this the right way, we're talking a knockout year that for me, I'm greatly excited for 2021 because there's so many possibilities right now.
Definitely agree. We hope you enjoyed the very first episode of Modern Retrospect. Up next is our episode on Microsoft 2021 Outlook, followed by Sony. After that, we will be releasing new episodes every week on a variety of video game topics and game-specific episodes, along with some other surprises. We hope you stay tuned.
You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you enjoy our ramblings, please feel free to subscribe, rate us, or leave a voice message so we can hear your feedback on today's topic. If you want more retro hits and modern bits, just hop on back. You have a good one.
Bye, everyone.